Well, hello and welcome to the Mid-Week Wednesday edition of the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand in for Todd, who is enjoying some well-earned vacation. Boy, a cold day today, isn't it? We finally get to see some sun after the last few days of rain, and it's back to the toque and mitts. Vanessa Vandenez, who does a fantastic job behind the boards and behind the glass in the studio, came into the newsroom this morning and said, I wish Mother Nature would make up her mind. It's spring in the Maritimes, right? If you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, a meteorologist once said. It was a tough one last night for the Halifax Mooseheads, dropping a 4-1 decision to Drummondville. Bridgewater's own Luke Woodworth, big night for the Volts. 2 goals at Scotiabank Centre. Now there's not a lot of time to digest that loss. The Moose and the Volts back at it again tonight with a lot on the line. 6,300 fans, by the way, at Scotiabank Centre last night. And then with the Moose and the Volts back in action tonight, I expect to see more people there tonight. But if you can't make the game, if you can't get down to Scotiabank Arena or Center, and then your best chance to catch all the action is to join us right here on 95.7 News Radio with Gareth McDonald, pregame show, the Mr. Lou pregame show at 6:30. The puck will drop at 7 o'clock tonight. Well, so if you just heard from Shelley, sad news from Hollywood overnight. Val Kilmer passed away at 65. Kilmer, of course, famous for his portrayal of Iceman in Top Gun. Jim Morrison in The Doors, and I think the very best ever, Doc Holliday in Tombstone. Val Kilmer dead at 65. Well, the big story today, of course, is what will happen at the White House later today. President Trump is holding an event in the Rose Garden at 5:30 Atlantic time to announce his so-called, I'm going to put quotations around this, Liberation Day tariffs. All will be revealed, I guess, or will it? Earlier this week, I said this is going to be a historic day, and I still think that'll be the case. Reciprocal tariffs, tariffs on much of the Canadian economy when it comes to trade, all kinds of things on the table with regards to this. Just before I came on the air here a few minutes ago, I was watching an interview with Flavio Volpe. He is the head of the Canadian Auto Parts Association, and I've mispronounced that, but you get the point. And Mr. Volpe said that with the auto tariffs set to take effect tomorrow, they'll start collecting them tomorrow. Within the next 14 days, within the next 2 weeks, 125,000 auto worker jobs are at risk. So let that one sink in a little bit. 125,000 auto worker jobs. Watched a speech yesterday from the President of the European Union. They vow to retaliate. Canada has said it will retaliate. I understand that the Prime Minister is in Ottawa. He stopped down his campaign again today and will hold a number of meetings. He's going to meet with his advisory council, the members from across the country, the one that former Premier Stephen McNeil sits on, and Mr. Volpe, as I mentioned before. They're going to meet apparently at 4:30 Atlantic time, and then at 5:30 Atlantic time today, the Prime Minister will hold a cabinet meeting, and maybe we'll hear what Canada's plans are. Some of the experts are saying that Canada's probably going to wait a day or two before announcing a full slate of what our plans are to retaliate against this tariff action from the United States, mostly because nobody seems to know what's going to happen. Mr. Volpe in that interview said that the White House doesn't even know what's going to happen today. We're just hours away from what is going to be a massive announcement, and the only person that really knows what the president is going to say is the president. I'm sure there's a lot of hand-wringing in Ottawa this morning. I'm sure there's a lot of hand-wringing in Washington this morning. I know there's a lot of hand-wringing in Brussels. I know there's a lot of hand-wringing in London. I know there's hand-wringing all over the world because he said that pretty much he's going to tariff everybody. I guess we will just have to wait to see. I'll be watching of course, like many of you will be watching the president's speech. I'm listening to see if he's going to go back down the 51st State Road. It's been a couple weeks that he's been fairly quiet on that. Is that where he's going to go with this again? I know he got upset last night about the Democrats forcing a vote in the Senate that may hinder him from imposing tariffs with regards to the whole fentanyl thing, which far as I'm concerned, is a made-up thing. And I know he's upset with the Senate. He's tweeting about it, or what do you call it when he puts it on his truthing about it on Truth Social or whatever it's called? Anyway, I'm going to be listening for the 51st state stuff. I'm also going to be listening to what the federal government is planning to do. I'm also going to be listening for what Tim Houston has planned and the rest of the premiers. All of that to be determined today, at least we hope. Well, I guess the best case scenario would be to have the president of the United States stand up at the podium at the Rose Garden and say, you know what? I think we're in pretty good shape. We're not going to put any tariffs on, but I really doubt that that's going to happen today. Tomorrow's show, by the way, here on the Todd Veinotte Show, dedicated entirely to these tariffs. We're going to bring in a bunch of experts, people that are impacted by this, to really give you a good, rounded look at what all of this business means, how it's going to impact you, how it's going to impact your family, how it's going to impact your kids, how it's going to impact your retirement. We're going to dig into that all day tomorrow, so make sure that you keep your radio locked right here to 95.7 News Radio. As for today, don't forget House Calls goes at 11 o'clock. And, of course, the Midweek Meltdown, the open hour, my favorite hour of the day, is set to go at noon today. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about. Obviously, the tariffs will be top of mind. The question I'm going to put to you today for the call-in at noon is, what do you think that the American president's going to announce today? Is he going to announce the full bevy that he's been sort of musing about? Is he going to maybe back off a little bit? Or is he going to, give Canada a pass? And the second part of that question is, what should Canada's response be? I know it's very easy for us to just take the body blow and then want to hit back immediately. Is that the right approach? I'll give you my opinion on that coming up at noon today. Also, a little bit later in the show today, in just a few minutes' time here, we're going to have a conversation with the union that represents firefighters in Halifax. They put out a statement a couple of days ago raising some concerns about the number of abandoned buildings in the Halifax area. Looking at one right now through my window, that's Bloomfield. There's been a number of fires at St. Pat's Alexandra. The firefighters are concerned that this is a safety issue, not only to the general public, but also to the firefighters that have to go in there and put those fires out. We're going to have a conversation right after the break with the vice president of the International Association of Firefighters Halifax, Joe Triff, will be joining us. But my question to you is this. They're asking that we, do a better job with abandoned buildings. Can the city do a better job with abandoned buildings? It's not like it was in the past, I will say. It's not derelict landlords that have just let their buildings go and board them up and just leave them there and hope they'll sell. Most of these properties have been sold and are now in the hands of developers. And we heard in the news today that one of the developer at Bloomfield, Bank Group, has a demolition permit. That building is coming down, finally, after the fire, and now it's eventually going to come down. Can the city do a better job in its rules and its bylaws and in the way that it hands out these properties when they go through the process of selling them and those kind of things to ensure that they don't stand derelict for a long time? That's going to be a question I'm going to ask you today. Very quickly before we take a break, and I think I already did, but I'm going to make sure I do it today because I didn't yesterday. Thank Vanessa Veinotte for all the hard work that she does behind the glass. Without her, the show just doesn't move forward. Fireworks. Now, we are in a long history with fireworks in this city and in this country, right? We have fireworks for Natal Day, and we have fireworks for Canada Day, and so on and so forth, and the ability for private citizens to purchase fireworks. I know there are rules that are associated with it. Is there. It's not completely illegal. It's not like it's a black market thing or anything else. But, and last night, of course, was April 1st, and I'm sure there was some different cultures celebrate April 1st different ways. I know that it was Syrian New Year that Vanessa was talking about yesterday. Anyway, laying in bed last night in my apartment up in Clayton Park, and it was like 10 minutes before 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and all of a sudden, it sounded like that there was an invasion happening or a war zone happening in my neighborhood. Booms and blasts and crackles of fireworks. Now, I understand that, and I mentioned it as part of the preamble, that we have a long history celebrating things with fireworks. And I know they're fun to watch, and if it's in your yard and it's the kids like it, and the dog's not necessarily so much. But, I mean, on a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock, kids had to go to school. That would have it did wake up the whole neighborhood. Should there be stronger rules on this? I know we've had, when it comes up to these big events like Canada Day and Natal Day and so on and so forth, we've had people on this, or Todd's had people on this program talking about the problems that fireworks have with animals, right? Because pets don't know what's going on. Well, livestock doesn't know what's going on. Dan didn't know what was going on last night. I was, he get in that just fell asleep phase, and then all of a sudden, there's flashes and bangs, and what's going on? So, anyway, maybe it's just a rant from an old guy, that's me, about noises at night. But can we maybe, designate days for this? Or designate time periods? You can do it on a weekend. You can do it at dusk on a Saturday, not on a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock when people are trying to get their kids to sleep and get Dan to sleep. Because, when you get older. End of rant. We're going to stop down. We're going to take our very first break. When we come back, abandoned and derelict buildings in HRM. The firefighters that go into these buildings to put out fires inside them say they're dangerous, not only to their members, but to the general public. A conversation with the Vice President of the International Association of Firefighters Halifax, Joe Triff. When we return, you're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We are back in minutes.
Thanks.
All right, welcome back to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day. This story on our website, halifax.citynews.ca. And very quickly, if you haven't already entered, you might want to go onto the contest page when you log on to read this article and check out our weather guarantee contest. We're at a record high. It crossed $4,100 today. Alistair Alders misses that weather guarantee by more than 3 degrees. That could be yours. And hey, in today's economy, who couldn't use $4,100? This story on the front page. A union representing firefighters in the Halifax area pulling the alarm on the dangers posed by derelict buildings after several fires in recent weeks. 3 fires reported at the St. Patrick's Alexandra School on Maitland Street in the North End last week. That according to the Halifax Professional Firefighters. Our members are trained and ready to respond, but each of these calls introduces a series of risks, not only to firefighters, but to members of the public who may be inside or near these properties, said the union's president. The vice president of the aforementioned Firefighters Union Halifax is Joe Triff, and he joins me on the phone this morning. Joe, how are you?
Hey, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Let's kind of break it down for people who may not know. When you guys go into one of these abandoned buildings that are all boarded up, what's it like inside them? Like, it must be just a black abyss, is it?
Yeah, we never really know what we're getting into. We don't know what's been brought into the buildings or what the condition of the structure is on the inside. It changes as people, come and go. Attempts to restrict access to the building obviously pose safety risks for us trying to get out in an emergency. There's no monitoring, there's no alarm systems, there's no sprinkler systems. So any fires set inside these buildings are able to get to an advanced stage before they're detected or reported to the fire department. So you saw the effect of the Bloomfield fire. It was an intense incident, and it was able to get advanced and get kind of much further along in the fire stages than a building that would be monitored.
Now, you mentioned there's no electricity, no any sort of services to these buildings. So I would imagine the major cause of all these fires is human caused. Am I correct?
I would make the same assumption. People have to stay warm or bring their own source of heat or fuel into these buildings.
There's a number of them. Obviously Bloomfield has been one that's been in the news. St. Pat's Alexandra in the news, but there's a number of these abandoned buildings just on the Halifax Peninsula.
There is.
And that you're obviously being called to these things quite frequently.
Yeah, I think there's development, the unhoused population in the city. People do what they need to do to get out of the weather and try to keep themselves secure. And we'd like to see these buildings come down before they result in fatalities. And
that was my next question. What can the city do better to stop this danger from happening?
Yeah, the sooner the buildings are down, the better for the community and the better for firefighters.
You mentioned some of the impediments, the concrete blocks and the boards on the windows and those kind of things. Is there a better way that we can secure these in the interim before they're tore down, or is the best solution just getting rid of them?
I think the safest solution is to bring them down in a controlled manner before a fire is lit and brings in the excavators.
If you raised obviously these concerns with Halifax Fire and with the city, are they listening to you fellas, or is this something that needs more attention?
Yeah, they're listening. We've had really good interaction with the current city council, and they're very very receptive, very willing to meet and discuss the issues. I think the developers are obviously involved in this and could play a vital role in bringing the buildings down sooner. And hopefully we'll start seeing that happening.
Well, I sleep better knowing that you guys are on the job, and I appreciate your time, Joe.
Thanks so much, Dan. Have a great day.
That is Joe Triff. He is the Vice President of the International Association of Firefighters Halifax. We mentioned St. Pat's Alexandra. I think there's been 3 fires there in the last little bit here. 12 fire-related calls to that site in the last 12 months alone. And we know what happened over at Bloomfield. We did learn yesterday that the developer that has purchased the Bloomfield site, Bank Properties, said that there is a demolition permit that is now in effect on that property. We saw the first bit of that building come down a couple of weeks ago after the fire, and Bank Group telling us yesterday that the rest of the building will come down. So we'll see the end of a long discussion about Bloomfield, but there's a lot of these properties around, maybe not as many as there used to be because of the property values, but I think in my preamble I said that the city needs to find a happy medium in being able to move these properties to developers, which I don't think is a big deal given, as I mentioned, the price of property these days. But we also can't have them sit vacant for months and years and years and years, because as Joe told us, trespassing happens. People are going into those buildings that aren't supposed to be in those buildings. People are living in those buildings that aren't supposed to be in there. And the impediments to stop people from doing that, the concrete blocks, the fences, the boards, that kind of thing, is also an impediment to firefighters who are trying to get into these buildings, and should the fire escalate, get out of these buildings. Well, I'm glad that there's discussion going on. I'm glad that council is lending an ear to the firefighters union to maybe find a better way. Maybe we have to put like a time frame, or a time frame with penalties attached to it. If you don't tear down X building by X date after purchase, then you have to pay some sort of fine or some sort of surcharge or tariff. It's the word of the day. And that would maybe be a financial incentive for some of the developers or people who purchase these properties to get on with it and get them down, at least get them down, so that we don't have another Bloomfield or something much more tragic. It was, I think, a minor miracle that nobody was seriously injured in that Bloomfield fire. Could very easily have been with some of the pictures I've seen and some of the anecdotal information that I've read or heard about the homeless population taking over some of these buildings. So it really is a safety hazard. Mentioned off the top of the program today that it is and I'm putting quotations around this, the so-called Liberation Day in the United States. And I mentioned an effort by the Democrats in the U.S. to try and put a block on it. Did you see any of that yesterday? The 25 hours that Senator Brooker was up speaking in a filibuster. Now, I'm not a big fan of filibustering. In fact, most of the time I just find it to be an absolute annoyance. But that guy's got to get some credit because regardless of the issue, and we all know that the issue is important to us, for somebody to stand at a lectern on the floor of the U.S. Senate and speak for 25 hours, that's something. And it caught the attention of the President of the United States even, who was not very happy with the whole thing. He's calling out a bunch of senators to get on, quote, the Republican bandwagon to fight the Democrats' wild and flagrant push. This, I'm quoting this now from President Trump's truth, as he calls it. Flagrant push not to penalize Canada for the sale into our country of large amounts of fentanyl by tariffing the value of this horrible and deadly drug in order to make more costly to distribute and buy. So, and I don't like to put words into President Trump's mouth, but did he just say that he wants to tariff fentanyl? Anyway, the Senate bill is just a ploy of the Democrats to show and expose the weakness of certain Republicans, namely Mitch McConnell, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and Rand Paul. And the fact that it's not going anywhere because the House will never approve it and I, as your president, will never sign it is why are we allowing fentanyl to pour into our country unchecked and without penalty? He goes on to talk about derangement syndrome, and I'm not going to qualify that with a response, but not happy with some of the people in his bench. And as much as filibustering, I think, is for the most part, it's all dog and pony show. For somebody to stand up at a lectern for 25 hours and speak on something, that's got to get some credit for that. And it's never, to use the President Trump vernacular, it's the biggest one ever, never been done before. It's a record setter. We're going to stop down and take a break. I know it's not funny, but I can't imagine speaking for that long. We're going to stop down and take a break. Read a story earlier this week emanating out of HRM about the rat infestation and problems with rodents and vermin. One story in particular where a neighbor is alleged to be feeding rats. Why, I don't know, but is allegedly and neighbors are concerned. They don't know what to do. We're going to take a look at the mouse and rat and vermin problem in HRM. How big is it? Is this a real thing, or is this a specific neighborhood, or is it not? And what we can do as homeowners to protect our properties against an infestation of these four-legged, long-tailed animals. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. Happy Wednesday. We're back in minutes. Welcome back. Dan Alstrand along with you here on a Wednesday morning as we make our way through the weekend into April, as the spring is sprung-ish. It's sunny but cold, but we're starting to see the signs of spring. We're starting to, at least in my neighborhood, saw some geese return on the weekend. They're back in Belcher's Marsh. Starting to see more of the birds show up, and so on and so forth, and getting rid of the long winter, which is a good thing. Came across a story earlier this week about coming out of Wolfville, a story that was about infestation of rats and caused by perhaps some of the behaviors of people in the neighborhood or a neighbor, and the person that is the centerpiece of the story not knowing exactly what the right thing to do with that is. And that got me thinking about mice and rats, and we know that Wolfville's not alone in having rodents. I think they're pretty much universal, but we know Halifax has had long, and I don't know if storied is the right way to say that, but a history with them. I hear all the time friends and colleagues talking about mice and rodents being in their houses, in their recreational vehicles. I had mice in my apartment, not this year. There's some wood to knock on, but I've had them in the past, and I know many of you out there have. And it seems like it could be a kind of a losing battle. A mouse doesn't need a whole lot of space to get into somewhere, and we have, the idea that Halifax remains to be a port city brings with it the idea of these kind of rodents and so on and so forth. So we thought it appropriate that we reach out to the experts to maybe give us a little bit of some tools to put in the toolbox as we get into spring and we get into summer, and find ways that we can mouse-proof or rat-proof our properties so that we don't have a little bit less of a chance of having these things in our house. We're very pleased to welcome to the program from Scotia Pest Solutions, Jesse Roach. Jesse, how are you?
Good. How are you? Good morning.
I guess the first question is, they're everywhere, right? These things, these mice and rats are everywhere in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I mean, like I've spoke on it before in different areas that it seems like just in the last 5-6 years that the populations are getting out of control. Our winters are much more mild than they used to be, and it's causing them to be able to reproduce effectively year-round in wooded areas or away from structures. So those populations are getting larger, and then they're being forced to look for new resources, and that's us.
And they're working their way into the urban areas and looking for a place to live, right?
Exactly, right? Like it's just, it wasn't that long ago that winter meant it was -16 for a month, and now it's, +5, +10, plus this every day. We get those little drops, but it's not long enough to really put a dent in the, outskirt rodent population, so they're reproducing out of control.
Is there a simple solution to try and keep mice and rats, the rodents, out of your property? Or is there a checklist, or what's the best approach to prevent them from coming into your home?
Well, like starting with the yard, like you want to make sure that you're keeping like different plants or different like just overgrowth away from your home, keeping like flower beds cut down and like at least 2 feet away from your actual structure. You're looking for, maybe you have a pile of miscellaneous wood that's stacked somewhere behind a shed. Like these hiding places, like they're opportunistic. They're looking for that first hiding place. And if you have different kinds of food in your yard, like if you're not taking care of different garbage, or like bird seeds are notorious. Like we go to, I'd say 75% of the rodent issues we go to, they're like, yeah, I was feeding the birds. It's like, I know, like I like birds too, but now you have, rats. Right. So bird feed and different feeds like that are a big issue. Leaving different kinds of garbage in like sheds and stuff like that can be a big issue. And just creating hiding places, that's your yard. For your house, like even though a rat can chew through most things, they're usually just looking for the easiest way to get in. So there's often little flaws in builds, and we'll go around a foundation of a home with a mirror checking the foundation where it meets the siding, and oftentimes we'll find gaps and holes that have been made bigger because a rodent found that first little place to grab onto. And then rodent proofing is as simple as getting metal there, filling the hole with something that they are less likely to chew through.
And is there a particular time of the year where this problem's worse? I've been told that, it's the fall when they're looking for a place to get in from the winter. Is that fallacy, or is that the truth?
It becomes more urgent for them to find a new food source in the fall, because a lot of the seeding plants and different things like that they eat are going away. But I find it's year-round. There's rodents, if they're opportunistic, that's the word, right? Like if they find an opportunity on your property to get shelter, water, or food, they're going to take it. And then they're going to start reproducing. And it might not seem like an issue at first, like, oh, I've seen one mouse or I've seen one rat, but, one rat can turn into a lot left unchecked.
Right. If they get in. Jesse, what's the best method? I mean, when we had them, I went old school with the spring trap and the peanut butter. Is that the best approach, or does it depend on what the rodent is and that kind of thing?
You can, like, snap traps are great. Like, we use them and we utilize them a lot. I find with rats, especially when you get a larger population of rats, they learn so quickly what traps are, be it snap traps or live traps, that you'll only catch a certain amount of them, and then you'll stop catching them because they learn, like, oh, that's a dangerous thing. And that's when you have to bring in a professional to use, commercial methods to get rid of them.
How long does it take? How long does it average take to get to mouse-free or rat-free a home? Does it depend on, I would imagine, the infestation?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like, we try to, like, all our programs that we offer, we put 3-month guarantees on them. And I always joke with people, I tell them, like, you have a 3-month guarantee. If I don't get rid of your rats in a month and a half, I don't make any money. So I try to get rid of them in a month and a half.
You mentioned that the population is booming. Have you been busy? Is it a busy time of the year? Have you been busier than usual?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Really, really busy, especially where, we're kind of lucky out here. We're a local business and we've really put in the work to, like, build a reputation. Right. And people are looking for local more now, which is, really nice. So we're getting a lot more calls of people kind of like switching away from the larger companies from wherever.
Yeah. How about compost bins? I'd imagine they're a very significant attractant.
The new ones aren't so bad. The ones that had the vents on the bottom of them were really bad for rats. The new ones, if they're maintained to a degree, they're not too bad because they don't have those vents in the bottom where they just chew right into the bin. You still have to be mindful about, like, okay, like, does this smell like last night's dinner? For 2 weeks, it's going to draw things to the neighborhood. It's a good practice to kind of give it a little spray out with something, every other week. But the new bins aren't so bad, would be my answer to that. Like,
Jesse, if we want to, if perhaps we have an infestation or we want some more information, how do we get in touch?
The best way is our website, scotiapest.ca. Everything's on there, lots of information on there. And, of course, our phone number's on the website, scotiapest.ca. And, yeah, I put a lot of work on the website, so
good
to make it easy.
All right, Jesse, appreciate your time. I know you're busy.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for having me on.
All right, have a great day. That is Jesse Roach, the co-owner and operator at Scotia Pest Solutions. They're everywhere, folks. They are in your neighborhood. They're probably in your yard. And keeping them out of the house is not an easy task. And they are crafty and they are sneaky. And they, if they have any chance of getting in, they will. So good time now that we're going to be out doing the spring cleanup, right? We're going to be, checking the yard, checking the flower beds, pulling all the old stuff out, getting ready for those, those beautiful flower beds and beautiful yards. Good time to check to see if there's anything that can be done to perhaps stop this, because it is and I only can speak for myself, but it's just the most awful feeling, right? When you're sitting in your living room and you're watching a Blue Jays game, or when you're listening to the Todd Veinotte show and you see a mouse scurry across the floor, it's just that awful feeling. And if we can do anything to prevent it, then all the better. We're going to stop down and take another break. When we come back, Movember. But Dan, it's April. We'll tell you the connection between Movember and April being Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in a minute. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. You know what it's like, right? You're sitting on the couch and you're watching TV after you've had perhaps one of those rodents in your house, and everything looks like it right out of the corner of your eye. You thought you saw something, right? It's like, what's that? Or you're looking, between the bookcases. Is it there? It takes like a super long time for that feeling to go away. So again, if you have the ability to, or maybe you live in a building, good time now to maybe next time you see your super Just give them the old elbow in the ribs and say, hey, what are we doing to prevent this? Because they can be destructive, right? They can do some certain damage. You get a mouse into your house and start chewing stuff and that kind of thing, right? And if you're lucky enough, can you tell that I want a garage? If you're lucky enough to have a garage, they can do some serious damage and cause problems. So good time of the year to take a look at it. I mentioned before the break, Movember, and I know you're all reaching for your emails to say, Dan, it's April. Why are we talking about November? But Movember is an important month, and that is because we accomplish a lot of really great things having men talk about things like, prostate cancer and those kind of things. But you may or may not know that April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. Very pleased to welcome to the program, the cancer program implementation at Movember Canada. That's Mike Fraser, and he's our guest on the phone. Mike, how are you?
Great, thanks. How are you?
It was funny when I was prepping for the show. I'm like, we're talking about Movember already, but this is a different kind of tie-in.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people wonder what we do the other 11 months of the year, but
right.
there's a lot going on. So April is Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. It's always been part of our remit to focus on testicular cancer as well as prostate cancer and men's mental health. It's very important month because I think a lot of people are not aware of the fact that testicular cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in young boys or boys and young men under the age of 40. 75% of actually in that age group do not realize that, and that's I think a shocking statistic.
These events or these initiatives, I should say, are super important in my opinion because with Movember and now with this event that we're doing here in April to talk about testicular cancer, it gets men together and men and women together to talk about things that men just don't like to talk about. We don't sit around and talk about testicular cancer, do we?
No, absolutely. I mean, I certainly, men in general, I think, aren't quite as good as women at necessarily taking care of their health. That's a larger problem. But particularly for this disease, testicular cancer, when I was 15, I don't think I was thinking about cancer. I had my mind on other things, and but it's important that men recognize that this is out there. It's a relatively uncommon cancer, which is good, but in this age group, it can crop up. And the good news is that the screening self-testing process is really, really simple. It's why we call our campaign "Know Thy Nuts." Being a little cheeky there.
Right.
It's really simple. You just you can do it in the shower once a month, and just establish kind of what feels normal for you. What do your testicles feel like? Have a feel around, and then if you see something that's or you feel something that's changed over time, or you're kind of not sure what that is, you go to the doctor and say, hey, doc, I felt this. Is this something to be concerned about?
Right, because when we catch these things early, as is with most cancers, it's way easier to treat.
Oh, absolutely. Testicular cancer is one of the very most treatable cancers. Cure rates are well over 95% if you can detect the disease early. And unlike other cancers that, they're kind of growing in your body, you can't see it, and symptoms might be unclear. Testicular cancer, you can actually screen yourself for it.
Right.
And like I said, most of the time, it's probably nothing. There's a lot of things that go on down there that might change over time. So that's why we stress kind of knowing what normal is for you, and if there's a change in that normal, go have that conversation.
So is this a all about awareness campaign, or are you planning events, or what's going on this month?
It's an awareness campaign primarily to get that information out there. We have, the benefit as an organization of some absolutely incredible people who are out there in the community who raise awareness for us, who raise, money for the cause during November and actually all year round. So, we're thrilled about that. If you have been diagnosed with testicular cancer, or you know somebody who has, you can go to Movember.com to our other testicular cancer related platform, which is called Nuts and Bolts. Again, trying to be a little cheeky there. Mm-hmm. Just to kind of get information about the disease, what to expect, treatment options, that sort of thing, so you can get the information that you need if you or someone is currently going through it.
It's just the most important to get the education out there and just literally sit down and talk about it.
Absolutely. Talking is where everything begins, not just with testicular cancer, but with health in general, is taking an active role in your own health.
Mike, I appreciate it. More information available on the website, I assume.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to Movember.com/KnowThyNuts. You can find out everything you ever wanted to know about testicular cancer awareness.
Mike Fraser, appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
That is Mike Fraser from Movember talking about their campaign here in April. Know Thy Nuts. A little bit of play on words. Anyway, been involved with Movember for many years now. I know that we talk about it and we raise awareness here on this program a lot. And as I mentioned to Mike, it's so important that, we just have the conversation. Just be honest, not necessarily something that is water cooler talk with your arm on the water cooler talking about Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. At least not my workplace. But it's all kidding aside, very important, and as Mike said, very treatable, which is something that is the most important. And I've had friends and family members that have gone down the testicular cancer route before, and well, very lucky to be able to say that they caught it early and they have been treated, and the cancer's there no more, I shall say. So. Very important cause, and the conversation very, very important. We're going to get ready to take a break here. Blake is going to come in and tell us a little bit about what's going on in the world today at the top of the hour. And on the other side of that, of course, kind of a segue, we're going to welcome into the program Dr. John Gillis for House Calls. So I hope that if you have a medical-related question, you will have the opportunity to have the good doctor take a listen and maybe give you a little bit of advice. So again, Dr. John Gillis will be here after the news at 11 o'clock. Just came across my desk from Halifax Regional Police. They've charged somebody now in relation to that collision back on Monday in Spryfield, if you remember. Around 1 o'clock Monday afternoon, officers responded to a two-vehicle collision in the 500 block of Old Sambro Road in Spryfield. 51-year-old woman who was the driver of one of the vehicles was transported to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. The driver and the passenger of the other vehicle were seen leaving the scene on foot, fleeing into the nearby woods. But an hour and 15 minutes later, officers found both individuals in the woods and arrested the driver. Passenger was released without charges and turned over to EHS for treatment, again, for what were believed to be non-life-threatening injuries. 35-year-old Scott Creamer of Halifax facing a bevy of charges now and appeared in Halifax Provincial Court yesterday. Again, Blake's going to bring us up to date on what's going on in Halifax, in HRM, and right across the country with the newscast at the top of the hour. And on the other side of it, get your medical questions ready. We're going to open up the telephone lines now. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. House Calls. Dr. John Gillis, your guest, next. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in minutes.
Facts.
Welcome back. It's about 4 minutes after 11 in the spirit of Rick Howe. How are you all doing today? That means it's time for House Calls. We're just trying to connect up with Dr. Gillis this morning and get ready to take your questions. The lines are now open. They're wide open if you want to get in. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Vanessa busily working the lines to connect us up and get the good doctor all settled and into his spot for the show. Off the top this morning, I mentioned fireworks and that I was awoken last night to the sound of fireworks and so on and so forth. It's very interesting to me anyway, as most of you know, some of you may not. I spent some time as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces in my previous life, and it to this day, and it's been a number of years since I had a uniform on, but to this day when that first one went off, and it was fairly close to my house, it still was the immediate action happened, right? Like it's wild. I catch myself doing it every once in a while. It doesn't happen as much as it used to. And I know that many of you that are listening out there have had much broader experience with these type of things, and some of you are dealing with some issues as a result of it, and I'm not trying to make light of that at all, but it was just I always kind of have a little bit of a smile, a little bit of a giggle that all of that training that we all went through, it still works. It's still, I didn't hit the floor, but I certainly was up and ready to go, right? So anyway, 902-405-6000. We're very pleased to welcome into the show today to answer your medical-related questions. That is Dr. John Gillis. Dr. John, how are you?
Good day, sir. I'm well.
How are things over at Dartmouth General?
Oh, they're a mess as usual.
Busy? Is it busy? Busier this time of the year? Is it a little bit less than the wintertime? How does that work?
No, it's still crazy.
Yeah.
It hasn't eased off at all. It's same stuff, crazy numbers, admitted patients, and long wait times. It is not getting any better.
902-405-6000 is the telephone number if you have a medical-related question. The good doctor's here for the next 60 minutes to answer them. Dr. John, kind of a crossover today. Obviously, lots of eyes on happening in the United States with all these tariffs and the ongoing trade war. President Trump talking about tariffing medications. From your perspective, is there any concern in the medical community about these tariffs and any perhaps supply problems or anything like that?
I mean, we get supply from all over the world. I think some stuff comes from the U.S., but a lot of it comes from overseas, Europe and Asia. So I'm not super concerned about it. I just think it's insanity. America already has problems with access to healthcare for its citizens, and who are you going to hurt by driving up the price of medications? People who don't have insurance, people who are financially disadvantaged, people on Medicare, Medicaid, the elderly, and it's just it's sad to watch, but here we are.
Read a story yesterday or the day before. Some physicians that are currently working in the United States, perhaps not very happy with the way the political winds are blowing down there. Maybe considering leaving and maybe considering coming to Canada. I know we've talked about doctor recruitment in the past. Could this be one of those silver lining things where we see some doctors migrate north of the border?
Yeah, I mean, look, that would be nice. I mean, we definitely need people to come. I've heard a lot of people claiming they're leaving America for a long time for various reasons, right. And we haven't really seen much of a paradigm shift. But I'd rather some of these people stay home and try to fix their shit, if you'll pardon the pun.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's go to the phone lines. We welcome Joanne to the program. Joanne, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine, thank you.
Your question for the doctor, please.
I was just calling concerning a friend of mine. She was told that she has AFib and that her heartbeat was irregular, so her doctor put her on a fluid pill and a heart pill. And it just, like the fluid, it's ridiculous how the fluid builds up. And anyway, we went to see a doctor at the Cobequid 2 weeks ago on Monday, and he put in an urgent request to go to the Dartmouth General to see a heart surgeon, and we're still waiting. But he said it could take up to 2 weeks, but I don't know, is it going to take much? Do you know anything about the wait time to get in to see a heart specialist?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a heart surgeon, it would be a cardiologist. But,
yeah, I'm sorry, that's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, it can be, several weeks to months. It really depends on what they're trying to do. I mean, atrial fib, I know well. I had that. I thankfully don't have it anymore. Usually we put people on a blood thinner and something to slow the heart down, and then we look at trying to convert somebody back into a normal rhythm, either with a shock or with a procedure called an ablation, which is probably what they're trying to line up. But 2 weeks, that would be optimistic. I would say if you don't hear anything in the next week or two, I would hopefully you have a name, and you could call that person's office and just check on the status of the referral.
Yeah, see, she lives alone, hey, and she really gets excited. And she has a little dent in her driveway, hey, and the neighbor has to go and pick up her newspaper. We tried getting it thrown up on the step, but anyway, she even finds just coming down the driveway to pick up her newspaper and that and go back, she's all out of breath.
Yeah, no, that's not good. And look, if she's getting worse, you may have to take her back to the hospital if the heart rate is not controlled and she's not doing well. I mean, like I said,
okay.
Been there.
Okay, then thank you.
Thanks, Joanne. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Is that ailment a common one, Dr. John?
It is common, and it's age-related, and it runs in families. I've come to find out that quite a number of my maternal cousins, aunts, and uncles have this, and thankfully, due to the great care at the QE2, I had the procedure to kind of zap the source of it, and I get it rarely now. It'll occasionally rear its head, but most of the time, everything's normal, and it's again made a huge difference in exercise tolerance and all that stuff. But I do empathize with folks who have to deal with that because it's not a whole lot of fun.
Is it an electrical issue? Does the rhythm of the heart change? Is that what happens?
Yeah, what happens? Atrial fibrillation refers to the fact that the heart has 4 chambers, two atria up top and 2 ventricles. The ventricles are the main pumping mechanism, and normally the atria beat and then the ventricles beat in sequence. What happens with atrial fibrillation is the top starts beating very fast and with no rhyme, and that gets transferred to the bottom, and it literally feels like there's a bird flying around in your chest, and it's ain't a whole lot of fun.
Imagine not. 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Let's go back to the lines and welcome Albert to the show. Albert, how are you?
How are you doing?
Good. Your question, please.
Yeah, I have a problem with my pinky finger on my left hand. I'm noticing the last couple of weeks that there's a numbness in it if I kind of rub the side of it or to the top. And halfway down between my pinky finger and my wrist, there's a spot that if I press on it, it shoots a pain right through that finger, right from one end to the other. I was wondering what that is. It a nerve thing or what it is?
What was the first bit you said? You said you have a bump?
No, it's a numbness in my finger. It's almost like my finger's going numb. Yeah.
Yeah, so, you've got a nerve irritated somewhere along the line. It could be anywhere, basically, from your neck, through your shoulder, through your elbow, through the wrist itself. And I guess it's, try to determine where it is. If as you say, you can recreate it with a spot in your wrist, it may be some inflammation there that's causing it. And, I guess the key is to determine what's causing the inflammation and what to do about it. Sometimes it's soft tissue inflammation, in the elbow. We get tendonitis there. In the neck, it's, sometimes it's herniated discs. Sometimes it's irritations of the nerves due to arthritis. There's different reasons. So sometimes it's positional. If I sleep the wrong way, my left arm goes numb in a certain distribution. It's because of an old neck thing. So, nothing super serious by the sound of it, but I get someone to examine you and see if they can determine, specifically where it is. It sounds like it might be from that spot, and then determine if, some anti-inflammatories and injection, would help settle it down.
Okay. It's nothing serious then. I can get my own doctor to take a look at it.
You just get someone to take a look at it. One small bit of numbness in your finger is probably nothing serious, but you should get someone to take a look at it.
I was just concerned about the spot where I was pressing on it. It was just like a shooting, burning pain going right through the finger. I thought it might have been something else.
That would lead me to believe that that's the area that's inflamed and causing it. And, while annoying, probably nothing serious, but you should get it checked still.
Thanks, Albert.
Okay, then. All right, thank
you. Have a good
bye.
one. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. Is massage therapy something that would work in a situation like that, Dr. John, or is it case dependent?
It's case dependent. Probably not in that case if it's a localized area in the hand, but massage can be very effective for a lot of things.
We're going to stop down and take our first break. You're listening to House Calls on the Todd Veinotte Show. Dr. John, we'll be back in a minute.
X.
All right, welcome back. I'm Dan Alstrand. Hope you're having a fantastic day. Dr. John Gillis is with us for the next 45 minutes or so to answer your medical-related questions as we roll along. I got an email question before we go back to the phones, Dr. John. It comes from Mike. Mike says, I have a family member with pulmonary artery aneurysm. Apparently it's too small to operate, but it's growing, and eventually they will. But his question is that he's been told this can be passed along through the generations. It's hereditary. Should I tell my kids to get checked, and how do they check for it?
If somebody's telling them that it's genetic. I mean, it can be, presuming this where it is and what it looks like. Somebody thinks that it could be. Typically, a CT scan would be used to work something like this up to determine its size and structure, and if anything needs to be done about it. So it would definitely mention it to those individuals and their providers, and determine if in fact that recommendation exists to go ahead and get the process started.
Is this the same kind of thing as an aneurysm in your brain or in your lung? It's the same kind of deal? Well,
an aneurysm is just a word that means a growth and expansion of a blood vessel that has potential to burst. So, I mean, they exist in different places and happen for different reasons. In some cases, they're random. In some cases, they're genetic. In some cases, they're blood pressure induced, or related to different disease conditions. There's a whole host of reasons, but the idea is generally the same.
902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Let's go to the phones, and we welcome Eddie to the program. Eddie, how are you?
Very good.
Your question, please.
I got a question for Dr. Gillis. I suffer for chronic pain on my thigh. I got numbness, tingling, weakness on my left leg. My knee buckles. It's indicated that I have problems with my femoral nerve. What could you tell me about that?
Well, femoral nerve is a nerve that sort of goes through the hip and into the groin, and provides power and sensation to the upper leg and beyond. There's a condition called neuralgia paresthetica, which is caused by that nerve getting inflamed, sort of where it goes through, and sometimes that nerve can be specifically treated with either anti-inflammatories or, in some cases, injections to treat it. If that's in fact what it is. I mean, it could be that. It was diagnosed.
I was diagnosed with that. I seen two neurologists. I seen I saw Dr. David Clark, neurosurgeon. I saw your partner, Paul Doucette. I done physiotherapy. I done chiropractor. Been 5 years on this. Do you think it could be considering surgery at this point?
Not if for femoral nerve, it's not something they typically operate on. And like I said, injections work. But again, if that's what it is, if it's your back proper and there's something in your back that's surgical, then sure.
I know the femoral nerve branches from the lower back, goes into your hips. But they said the block is not on the back, but it could be on the front. So they need to do more research.
Yeah, I mean,
nothing has worked for me, and I'm every day in pain, numbness, tingling, weakness on the leg.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, femoral nerve irritation doesn't usually cause weakness. It certainly can cause pain. But I guess what I would say to you is, if it's still bugging you, you may need to get your pain regimen tweaked. Surgery is sometimes an option for things. It's usually not for this. But if your pain meds aren't working, it may be time for a reassessment and a tweak. That's probably the best advice I can give you at this point.
All the best, Eddie. Hope you start to feel better. 902-405-6000 is the number. 902-405-6000. We go back to the phones. We welcome Ryan to the program. Ryan, how are you?
Good, thanks. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
Good day, good day.
My question is related to my right knee. I'm 43 years old, healthy, and in November I had an injury playing volleyball. Took about 3 weeks to kind of get back on my feet, and did all the right things since November. And at this point, it buckles even if I just stand up, or if I just tap my toe on a chair while I'm walking by, it'll buckle out, and then it's about a week after that I have to suffer with inflammation, and I'm kind of limping around. So I'm just wondering, at what point should I escalate my request from my doctor to get an MRI, and just what part of the knee does he think that the interior part of the knee is where the pain is? And I just wanted to talk to the doctor about that. What he thought about that.
Well, I mean, I think you need a diagnosis, at least a best guess or best opinion at one. Do you have that?
Well, I went to my doctor originally, and my doctor said you don't want to mess around with the knees. So that the conversation ended there. So I do have some appointments lined up to push a little bit further. I just kind of want to know, like,
have you been to physio? Have you had it, assessed by a physio?
No, so that's one of the appointments I do have scheduled. But I did it myself. I had ACL replacement in my 20s, and my doctor at the surgeon said, your right one will be likely next in a number of years. But that was, 15, 20 years ago, and I guess they're right. But
yeah, I mean, the first thing is you need a proper diagnosis, and then from there you can determine if, medications, injections, bracing, all the things will help you in it while you, wait for an MRI, and then determine, are you going to do that? Are you going to wait to do it publicly? Are you going to pay to get it done quicker? Consider the options. And, it's not great to have to pay for stuff, but if your life is affected for, a long time, sometimes it is worth it for folks.
And I've heard you talk about your knees and knees a lot over the time you spend on the show, and I always find it interesting. But what do you think is best for a guy my age, 43 years old? That's like I can't run anymore, I can't play sports anymore, and it's kind of.
I'll stick to what I said about getting a diagnosis, but in my case, I've said this a few times. I had a ton of pain in my right knee. It was swollen, and because of it, I stopped a lot of activity. And I lost most of the muscle mass in the right thigh and hamstring, and that actually made things worse. What got me back on track, was, my bud, Dr. Urquhart, colorfully telling me to get off my arse and suck it up. But I started with biking. I would go to the gym and sit on a sit-down bike. I'm super ADD, so I'd watch TSN, listen to music, and read my emails or do it. I'd be doing 3 things at once. But before I knew it, I was biking 10K sitting down, and, I started to build a little bit of muscle back in my leg. And then I started from there, escalated that, got back to doing some leg extensions, some leg press. After a bit, I could start to squat again because the knee started hurting less. And, bit by bit, it built it back up. I mean, if you have a serious structural abnormality in your knee, that's going to be hard. In my case, I didn't. I was able to get an MRI in a few months. And it turns out I had a lot of wear and tear, but nothing serious. But, if you were to look at my knee in January of, 2024, it was a swollen mess. And it almost looks normal now. And strength and function-wise, it's the same as the other one. It's actually quite remarkable what you can do. But again, if you need a diagnosis and to make sure it's stable. I mean, if it's some inflammation and a little bit of meniscal damage and a little bit of this, a little bit of that, I had a bunch of things, but not one thing. I at one point thought my ACL might be gone. My ACL is fine. It looks like it's been through a nuclear war. It's irritated and a little bit tattered and twisted and stuff, but it's still intact. But again, the difference that has been made is remarkable. And I make myself go. I'm gonna head to the gym after this, even though I've got 20 minutes. I'll go jump on the bike. I'll show up in jeans, and that's all I have with me. If I forget my bag, try not to do that because you look pretty silly at the gym in jeans and dress shoes. But hey, you got to put the time in. You do it. So, give it a shot.
Best of luck, Ryan. Appreciate the call. We're up against the break. Dr. John is here on the other side of it. This is House Calls on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We are back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. This is House Calls. He is Dr. John Gillis. The lines are open. 902-405-6000 is the number. 902-405-6000. Dr. John, reading a lot of stuff coming out of the United States and out of Ontario with regards to measles. The outbreaks there continuing to grow, it seems. Not hearing an awful lot in our part of the world, which I guess we're lucky. The first question, I guess, is how do we protect ourselves from this disease?
Well, it's pretty simple. Get vaccinated if you haven't been. If you're unsure, check based on your, date of birth. If you've had 2 vaccinations, if you're not sure, get another one. And everybody needs to be vaccinating their kids. This massive stupidity that still seems to be prevalent, that people aren't doing that. A vaccine that's been around forever, that is safe and had basically eradicated this disease, is now back because, of, I hate to say it, but stupidity. People just not taking care of this for their kids, and in some cases, grandkids and such. We just need to get back to a proper pattern of vaccination. But, for, older folks, if you haven't been vaccinated, you too can go get one.
Dr. John, is there a place where you can find out if you've had two vaccines? Some people may not know that.
Yeah, most people would have a record from when they were kids on one of those little cards. If you've been with your doctor for a period of time or their office, they would ideally have that information. But, some people don't. And ultimately what I say to people is if you're not sure or there's a question, these vaccines are safe, go and get another MMR, mumps, measles, rubella vaccine. Protect yourself.
Is this virus the same kind of deal as other viruses like COVID with washing hands? Does that help, or is this a different thing?
Well, sure. Any virus, if you have less exposure, but generally this is person to person. It doesn't sort of linger in the air in the way that, or on surfaces the way COVID does. This is people being in touch with each other mainly, and people that are infected being in touch with other people who aren't immune and thereby passing it on. So, hopefully this gets contained soon.
A lot of talk as of late. Again, the number 902-405-6000 if you have a question. The lines are wide open. Dr. John, a lot of talk as of late, of course, dealing with fentanyl and the ongoing crazy between the United States and Canada, or I should say the United States on Canada. That being said, been doing some reading on psychedelic drugs and using psychedelics instead of using opioids. Have you done any looking into that, or is that a viable option?
I think a lot of the research on psychedelics is around mental health and trauma. I haven't seen much in the pain world yet. Maybe that will come, but there certainly is some viable research on mood disorders. Some psychotic disorders, PTSD, that sort of thing. Microdosing of psilocybin. I think is a legitimate treatment. And again, like many things, it's taken over to some degree where people are experimenting with it. In some cases, not necessarily knowing what they're doing or where they're getting their products. So there's some risk in that as well. But in many ways, psilocybin, which is what's in mushrooms that grow wild in this province. Certain ones, anyway.
Right.
If you eat the wrong mushroom, you won't be seeing pink elephants. You'll be seeing a pine box. So there's
don't mess with mushrooms. Period.
Yeah, you don't. But it's like it was a thing when I was a kid. It was like those ones can be eaten. Those ones will make you funny. Those ones will kill you. And people knew this, and they would harvest them. And they're out there. I think what is slowly happening is people are realizing that this is a chemical like many others, including cannabis and including chemicals that make up the medicines we use, that it has a role, and the more we understand it, standardize it, and control it, the better we can get medical use out of it, but the safer it will also be for those who wish to use it for recreational purposes.
Did a bit of a foraging course at one point in my life, and there's no coming back from the wrong mushroom at all. Once it's in there, you're done. So mushroom's not a good thing to go out and just experiment with.
Yeah, you go eat the odd blueberry, you'll be fine. But if you eat the wrong mushroom, you can literally end yourself.
Leads me to my next question, Dr. John, as we wait for more calls here. 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000. There's so much information, misinformation out there these days. Access to doctors is still a challenge here in Nova Scotia. It's getting better, but it's still a challenge. What advice can you give to our listeners as they wade through all this noise? Is there a good place to get information online, or should that just be face to face with Maple or with a physician?
No, it depends what you're looking for. I use the Mayo Clinic website. For infectious stuff, I'll use the Center for Disease Control or Public Health Agency of Canada. Same for travel stuff. WebMD has pretty good information. But there is a lot of quackery out there as well. So it is important to try and find reputable sites.
Reputable sites is the word of the day, I think, and that goes for a lot of different things, including your news, right?
Correct.
902-405-6000 is the telephone number. That's 902-405-6000. If you have a medical-related question that you'd like some advice on, Dr. John is here for the next little bit to answer that. We've got a couple of calls coming in. We're just letting Vanessa do what she does on the other side of the glass here and get these things into the queue. Again, 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. And there's one right now. Let's welcome Stephanie to the program. Stephanie, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you today?
Good. Your question for the doctor, please.
Yes, hi, Dr. John. I have a 5-year-old who had a fall/jump off of a playground structure 2 months ago. And she was casted for a broken tibia for almost a month. And it's now been 2.5 weeks, and she still won't really put any weight on it. So we were discharged when the cast was taken off, and they said she would bounce right back and would be back to normal before we knew it. And she's still, she's scooting around on her bum. She kind of is refusing to stand, so we haven't really been able to send her back to school yet. Just wondering if you had any advice on what we can try or who we could see.
Yeah, you probably need to go back to the clinic where she was casted. Where was that done?
At the hospital, at the IWK.
Yeah, so I would get back in touch with the ortho clinic or have your family doctor get you back in touch, and just that's not a normal outcome, right? People take different amounts of time to recover, but she should be. I've broken my tib-fib before, and when my cast came off, I had no muscle left, but I could still walk, and it took a few weeks to kind of build her back up, but it can take forever.
Yeah, is there such thing as physiotherapy for kids? Is that something that's at the hospital?
Again, as I keep saying, you got to figure out what the problem is. The kid, 5-year-old, should be walking after a fracture. That's not normal. There's either a malunion, meaning it didn't heal, or something else is wrong, and that needs to be addressed. And that's going to probably require at least another X-ray and an assessment, by the clinic. So I'd get on that as soon as you can. And if they can't get a hold of the clinic, usually the follow up on these types of things is pretty sharp. But if you have to, you may have to go into the IWK Emerge and just say, look, thanks for treating us. I think it was well treated, but for whatever reason, it hasn't healed, and we need another look here. That's how I would handle it.
Stephanie, all the best. Hope it turns out for you. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Let's grab one more call before we hit to the break. Can we welcome Colleen to the show? Colleen, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I do have a question with regards to these drugs out there like Ozempic, Trulicity, Wegovy. Their primary benefits are for diabetics, as I understand it, but they have sidebar benefits of weight loss. Have they been approved by the federal agency of Canada for weight loss?
They have, and I don't remember which ones are fully approved and which ones are sort of being used off-label, but the short answer is yes. There's been enough, data inputs that I think, the regulators feel that these things, are safe enough to be used in this context. I've said numerous times on here that I think they're being overused. They're diabetic drugs. They have side effects, bowel side effects and stuff. And, there are people that are, just let's get on the pill. I don't have to, I can, go to Robert's Donaires twice a day and, stop my workouts because I'm on this shot or this pill. And, that doesn't work either. So it's trying to find that balance of, activity and everything else. So, they are approved. For some people, they're a good choice, but, I maintain my view that they're still a bit overused.
Okay. No, that's great. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Colleen. I appreciate you. 902-405-6000 is the number. Now I want to donate, Dr. John. 902-405-6000 is the number.
Might have to drive by Tony's on the way to the office.
Hungry. Anyway, we're going to take a break and listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. He's Dr. John Gillis. House calls after the break. Welcome back. This is House Calls. He's Dr. John Gillis. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. Just a few minutes left here in our weekly segment with the doctor. Let's get to the phone lines to try and get all these calls in. We welcome Jody to the program. Jody, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Your question for the doctor, please.
I'm just questioning. I have a question about arthritis in my knees. I wondered if glucosamine chondroitin is a viable treatment for it, or if there's something better out there that will be better for it.
Yeah, so I mean, glucosamine and chondroitin work for some people. The evidence isn't great, but some people do find a benefit. It sort of comes back to what the problem is. I mean, I'm assuming you mean bony arthritis or osteoarthritis, which is just degenerative over time, as opposed to rheumatoid, for which there are some biologic agents that can help. You know, everybody gets rheumatoid arthritis over time. The mainstays of treatment, are, local treatment with ice, anti-inflammatory creams, braces, physio, that sort of thing, and then moving into medication, starting with simple things like Tylenol and ibuprofen, and moving on up, in some cases, injections, and in some cases, surgeries. Ultimately,
my doctor put me on tramadol for it. Would that be too strong, or?
Well, it's all relative. Tramadol is a mild opiate that, has a role. I prescribe a fair bit of tramadol to my patients. It's a safe medication and one that tends to have a lower addiction potential than some other painkillers. But again, with a lot of people with knees, and this has come up a few times today, and I speak of my own experience, the stronger the muscles are around the knee, coupled with carrying around, less pork chop. That was the other reason. I strengthened my leg to better align my knee, but I also dropped the chalupa and lost 35 pounds. So I'm carrying around a lot less beef on the knee. So both of those things can help. And look, it's not that easy if you're, like I said, I've been through it. If your knee hurts, you don't want to go for a run. You don't want to go biking because it hurts. It sucks. Yeah. But if you can push through it a little bit, as I was talking about a little bit earlier, as you start to build strength up, it will maintain the alignment of your knee, even if there is damage or it's a bit of bone on bone. And as you improve that alignment, do more, you lose a bit of weight, you're putting less stress on the knee, and it's amazing how that combination can work. But again, not for everybody. Some people need surgery, some people need replacement at some point. But you want to do everything you can to optimize your situation. As people are probably sick of hearing me talk about it, but like I said, I've been there.
Jody, appreciate the call. All the best. 902-405-6000 is the telephone number, 902-405-6000. Let's try and squeeze Debbie in here before we run out of time. Debbie, how are you?
Hi, great. How are you guys? Thank you.
Your question, please.
Dr. John, I don't have a question. In addition to your recommendations regarding measles, just for folks that don't know out there, there's a simple blood test that'll check your immunity.
There is? I didn't know that.
There is for sure. I had it.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a blood test. It's not done very commonly, I would say. I don't know if I've seen that done recently, and maybe that's a cost thing or a knowledge thing. But it is definitely something one can talk to one's provider about to see if it's the right fit, for them. But yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Appreciate it, Debbie. 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. We're just about out of time, Dr. John. I got an email question from somebody with relation to what's going on in the world these days, with lots to be anxious about. How can we tell if it's just the good old butterflies in the stomach or if it's something more serious that may need medical intervention?
Yeah, look, that's always tough. I mean, mental health has always been a tough topic. People are scared to talk about it. And, look, we saw it during COVID, during a period of high stress in the world. And, certainly political upheaval, threats of annexation, threats of economic doom can have an impact on people. And I think it's important to talk to people around you about how you're feeling. And it's important for people to be aware of their friends and family and how they're doing, and, watch for signs. It's, people can have a bad day, a bad week, even a bad month. But if feelings of anxiety and low mood are persisting, then it's time to get some help. And, that's individual, but that can be, can be something that we all need to look for in our friends and family.
And keep an eye on your friendly neighborhood Maple Leaf fan as we get closer to the playoffs.
Oh yeah, no, that's take away my hope once again every year. It's the great addiction.
Dr. John, is always a pleasure, sir. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a great day.
That is Dr. John Gillis here every Wednesday from 11 until noon to answer your medical-related questions. And I'll tell you, if he had a solution to the woes of the Toronto Maple Leafs, he would be a very rich man and a very good friend of mine, to be honest. We are almost at the top of the hour. Of course, Mark will be joining us to bring us up to date on the very latest of what's going on in HRM and around the world. And on the other side of it, it's time for the Mid-Week Meltdown. Lots to talk about out there today. Today could be, I think will be, a historic day for Canada, for the United States, and for the world. The American president is having an event at 5 o'clock this afternoon. I believe it's in the Rose Garden, and will announce what he's been termed Liberation Day, running out the tariffs on Canada, on Mexico, on the European Union, the rest of the world. The impacts of that could be catastrophic, or are they? We really don't know. My question to you is this. As we watch the clock tick down and we wait with anticipation to see what the U.S. president is going to say. You know what the interesting part, just a sidebar, is that many people believe that even his closest advisors, President Trump I'm speaking of, don't know what he's going to do yet. We're 5 hours away from him making what could be one of the biggest announcements of his presidency, and even his inner circle doesn't know what he's going to say. Wild. Anyway, my question for you today is this. What do you think the American president will be announcing today, and what should Canada's response be? I mentioned off the top of the program today, listening to Flavio Volpe from the Auto Parts Makers Association saying it's very difficult to lay out what Canada's response will be because we don't know what we're up against yet. And we may not know for some time today because the regulations haven't been written. So we don't know how these things are going to be enforced. There's been a lot of discussion about what Canada's response should be since this whole thing started back last year. And I think it's very easy for us as Canadians to say, all right, well, you punch me in the nose, I'm going to punch you back just as hard. Or whatever analogy you want to use. Probably a bad analogy, but I got my point across. There are some that are saying, well, hey, wait a minute. We're gonna take the body blow, but if we issue a body blow, then that's going to end up costing Canadians more because we know that it's not the governments that pay these tariffs, it's the consumer, the individual that is buying these goods that pays these things. And if we tariff however many billions of dollars of goods coming into Canada, then you and I and Vanessa and everybody else is going to be paying more for products that we use every day. And maybe we should just hang on a sec. What do you think that Canada's response should be? So the two questions are, what do you think the American president's going to announce today? I've heard all kinds of things. Headlines in different media organizations are conflicting. He's going to do this. He's not going to do this. We're going to get full tariffs. We're going to have tariffs. We're not going to get any. There's going to be exemptions. There's going to be reciprocal tariffs of double what we do. The list goes on and on and on. But what do you think the president's going to do, the United States president is going to do today? Also, abandoned buildings. You heard our interview earlier today with the firefighters union. They're raising some concern about the number of them and the number of calls that they're getting to them. Should the city be more proactive in ensuring that once these properties go derelict or are sold to a developer, that there is a clear and defined timeline with penalties attached that these buildings have to come down? Can the city do a better job of that? That, or whatever you want to talk about, because it's the beauty of the Midweek Meltdown, and it's coming up next. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. The lines are open, 902-405-6000. We're back after the news.
Thanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand in for Todd, who's enjoying some vacation time. It is time now for the Mid-Week Meltdown. The telephone lines are open, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The beauty of the open hour is you can talk about whatever it is on your mind, but I'm curious as to your thoughts on a couple of different subject matters today. One, with today being the day, and I'm putting quotes around this, Liberation Day in the United States, according to President Trump. What do you think is going to happen today? Do you think he's going to levy the tariffs he's been threatening? Is there going to be less? Is there going to be more? Is this a negotiation tactic? I've heard all of the above and more. I'm curious what you think. 902-405-6000 is the telephone number. Also, what do you think our government's response should be? We've heard from the Liberal government from almost the outset that the immediate response will be dollar-for-dollar tariffs. Justin Trudeau said that from the outset. Mark Carney has said that. Pierre Poilievre, just in a news conference a few minutes ago, said much the same thing. He said that he will never be the 51st state, which I think all of us can agree with, right? He said that these tariffs are illegal and that we should fight back. He also suggested that as Prime Minister, he would immediately call for a renegotiated NAFTA, whatever it's called now, and would demand perhaps, of the American president that all tariffs are paused while that new trade deal is under negotiation, and that these tariffs hurt both sides and businesses on both sides of the border. What should Canada's response be? What do you think you're going to hear today? And abandoned buildings. We heard from the firefighters earlier in the program today that they're raising concerns about the number and frequency of calls that they're getting to different abandoned buildings in HRM. Of course, the Bloomfield school site is top of mind with the big fire that we saw there a few weeks ago. Apparently 12 fires in 12 months at the St. Pat's Alexandra site. Can the city do a better job of ensuring that these buildings come down, not are secure, because as the firefighters told us, doesn't seem to work. There are people still getting into them, and the impediments stop them from doing their job and puts their health at risk. It becomes dangerous. If there's a concrete block in front of the door and they got to get out, they may not be able to get out. So what can the city do? Should the city do a better job of dealing with these abandoned and derelict buildings? 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's get to the phones and welcome Wayne to the program. Wayne, how are you?
Good day, sir. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind today?
Well, I was listening to your thing there about abandoned buildings and firefighting and that. Well, I was never a firefighter, but in saying that, I was in the Navy and we used to do marine firefighting, which is pretty different.
Right.
And to haul a hose through a ship was hard enough to do. My point I'm trying to get here is, if you own a home in Halifax and you're a hoarder, or you got a hoarder living next to you, and a fire breaks out in one of the houses around that house, and the fire department shows up and they can't set up the truck, they can't haul hoses. So what I'm saying is, if you got that type of situation around your home, you need to clean up your property and pick things up so that when first responders do show up to your home, they got a clear path to get into you and either save you or your house or your neighbors. Because I've noticed that bylaw enforcement in Halifax is almost to the point of useless, because you drive around this city and you see people with garbage in their yard that I'm thinking to myself, well, if I was a paramedic or a firefighter and I showed up to this property, there's no way they'd be able to get in there safely and get out. And there's no way, if they had to haul 200 feet of fire hose with 150 PSI on it, I don't know how much a hose weighs when it's 50 feet in length and with all that water in it. But I can tell you one thing, being in the Navy, hauling a hose through a ship was back-breaking work. So Can you imagine being a firefighter showing up at somebody's property that's full of garbage and then trying to put a fire out? It's ridiculous. And with the other thing I wanted to mention is the rat thing.
Yep.
I'm not going to say where I live, by the way.
Okay.
But where I live, when I first moved out there 17 years ago, I had the rats with their awning out and their sunglasses on, baiting on my front lawn and my driveway. It was that bad.
Oh, wow.
So what I started to do was I went to Canadian Tire and Kent's and Home Depot and those places, and I bought those big black containers and put. I bet you any money in the 17 years I'm gone through. I'm probably gone through 10 or 11 boxes of rat poison, and this year, every time you get that light layer of snow, I go out and look around to see what's going on in my yard.
Right.
I haven't seen any signs of rats around. Finally, after 17 years.
Holy smokes.
So people need to clean up their yards and stuff like that, because if something happens at a fire truck or something happens on your property that first responders show up, think about the poor first responder and think about your own health and safety. You'd want them guys to be able to work efficiency and get in there and hopefully save your house and you.
All right, Wayne, appreciate the call. Thanks for your service.
That's my rant for today. You're welcome, sir. Take care.
Cheers. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Raised some interesting points, right? You know, hauling those hoses, and I know it's their job, and I know that they're trained to do it, and I know that firefighters are trained to be able to handle that kind of thing, but anything that we add to make that job more difficult, it adds time, and a firefighter will tell you that time saves lives, right? And we had a discussion here, I think it was on Monday, when the mayor was in the studio. We were talking about traffic enforcement and the lack thereof, and the solution that we've come up with as of late is to put these traffic calming measures into things. Well, firefighters tell me that those speed bumps that they put in the roads, whatever the proper term is for them, also slows down their response. They can't come flying down the road with their lights and sirens on because they're hitting these speed bumps. So we're making their response time more difficult and perhaps dangerous. I don't know if they take bumps better than my vehicle does, but there are a number of these traffic calming streets in my neighborhood, and I drive a pickup truck, and they certainly bounce me around. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's welcome Ryan to the program. Ryan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. What's on your mind today?
First off, did anybody tell you that you and Mark sound almost identical? I thought you were reading the news for a minute.
It happens quite a bit. He's much better looking than I am, though.
Okay. I thought I had a little conspiracy there for a second.
No, it's actually two people today, believe it or not.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to talk about the armed forces.
Sure.
I got a chance to go to the War Museum out in Ottawa with my father, who is a veteran.
Nice.
He was a peacekeeper. He went to Rwanda, Afghanistan. He was there on the tail end of Bosnia, too. And I got to tell you, the sense of pride I had going through that museum, and then my dad explaining with the little exhibit they have for Rwanda. It's not big.
Yeah.
I know Rwanda was huge. I think Delaire said it was a big mistake for us to go there. But anyways, it's beyond the point. I had with everything that's going on with the tariffs and stuff in the U.S. and the pride that people are feeling for Canada, and how proud I am to be a Canadian. I'm proud of our veterans and our peacekeeping forces that have helped multiple. We've come into multiple countries to help with that kind of stuff with the UN and stuff. I'm seriously contemplating joining myself. I'm 36. I wanted to join when I was younger, but I had problems in my life that kind of prevented me from joining. But now that my life's kind of more together now, I've been thinking about joining. Now I got more affairs to get ordered because I'm fat now. I got to get in shape to get in. But anyway, but my point is just the sense of pride I am. I want to serve. I just want to show gratitude to my father and to a veteran like yourself. Thank you for your service, by the way.
Thank you.
And I want to join. So anyway, I feel that longing sense of pride. So it's a serious thing that I'm thinking about. But what I wanted to ask you,
sure.
And I know this is probably a controversial take, but I was thinking about like compulsory service, and I don't know if there's a way we can bring that back, because I know a lot of Nordic countries do, like Sweden, Norway, Finland. I think Austria does it. Brazil, they do compulsory service. Now, I know people would say, well, if you're a conscientious objector, then that's fine, but then you would have to do civil service, mandatory civil service for the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that should be brought in for the youth. Like, I wish I had this when I was a kid or when I was younger, because I think it brings good responsibility, teach good responsibility in younger people, and give them a sense of purpose to give back to their country. And anyway, I know it's a controversial thing, but I think it would be great for the country, and then help with to beef up our numbers for our armed forces too, right?
Right.
But anyway, sorry, I'll let you talk about it.
All right, Ryan, I appreciate it. I'm gonna let you go so you can we can get to more calls. But I'm going to answer your question. I'm very familiar with the European model, with the Nordic model, and particularly in Finland. Finland has the longest border. I think it's 800 and some odd miles long with Russia, and have been under constant threat from the Russian bear since the end of the Second World War. And their solution to that problem, and has been successful, at least thus far, they only joined NATO last year, was to have the ability to have a trained military called up within a couple of weeks. Numbers as high as 1 million people can be called up in that country, should they need to be called up, within a couple of weeks, according to the Finnish president. And living in that part of the world, they kind of had to. Now, you're right. You're absolutely right. A conscripted military is a controversial subject, to say the least. Anybody that has served will tell you that a conscripted military probably isn't as professionally trained as I'm putting quotes around this, professional military is. But I think the whole world has changed. Mark Carney said it, right? Our relationship with the United States that we've known is gone, and I don't think that anybody's arguing that point. I'm not hearing that from Pierre Poilievre or from any politician, that, moving forward, and regardless of what happens today in the Rose Garden, our relationship with the United States is no longer what it was just 6 months ago. So I think everything's on the table. I don't think that many parents, and I'm looking through the glass, want to hear of a draft or want to hear of compulsory service into the military, but the world's changed. And we can't rely on our neighbor to the south for our defense of our sovereignty anymore. I think that's a pretty well talked about and discussed fact. And with I don't even know what the numbers are anymore, but it's the Canadian military is very small in comparison to the size of this country and to the size of the population. It would be a difficult task to defend our sovereignty without any help. And even if we do get help from our NATO friends, if NATO even exists anymore, it's not like they can be here in 15 minutes, right? A mobilization takes time. And when these things happen, time is money, so to speak. So anyway, great call. I appreciate it. We're going to stop, take a break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. The Midweek Meltdown continues on the other side. I'm Dan Alstrand, back in minutes.
Thanks.
Welcome back. Midweek Meltdown time, 902-405-6000. If you want to get in, good opportunity. There's lots of open lines. Your chance to talk about whatever it is on your mind. We're asking the question today. I'm curious to your thoughts. I mean, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about, but I'm curious if you're watching as closely as I am what's happening today in Washington, D.C. at the White House in the Rose Garden at 5 o'clock, as the President of the United States will stand in front of a lectern or a podium and will announce what this Liberation Day that he's been calling this day for months is really going to be all about. What are you expecting to hear today? Will the tariffs be put back on Canada? Will we get that 25% broad tariff right across the board? Will we see perhaps some relief? I mean, he was talking earlier a couple weeks ago that, we may not be as bad as we thought. We're being nice to some people. Or is that just typical Donald Trump? Or, I guess on the other side of the coin, maybe he stands up there and says, well, we've decided that we're not going to put tariffs on. I highly doubt that's going to happen, but you just never know. You just never know. And what should Canada's response be? What should our country do? Should it be dollar for dollar, blow for blow, whatever you do to us, we're going to do to them, that kind of thing? Or should Canada have a more measured response and perhaps sit back and be a little bit more strategic and take a look at where these tariffs are coming? I mean, if it's the broad-based one, it's pretty obvious. And what exactly and how exactly, I don't even think anybody knows how this whole thing is going to work. Like the auto tariffs, the industry still doesn't know how that's going to work. There are parts, I think is it the camshaft of an engine? I think it'll be tariffed like 4 or 5 times before it's sold as a car because of the way that it crosses the border. Flavio Volpe from the it's escaping me. Flavio from the Auto Parts Association, I'm paraphrasing, said that within 2 weeks of these tariffs taking effect tomorrow, be 125,000 auto workers out of work. 125,000. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's go back to the phones. We welcome Mike to the show. Mike, how are you?
Dan Alstrand, my God, I am so honored to be speaking to you.
Wow.
Mr. Alstrand's little fella, Dan. How are you?
Little Todd. I love it. I'm going to get that. Vanessa's going to get that put on a T-shirt for me. I'm Little Todd.
Not Little Todd, Little Don.
Oh, okay, Little Don. Little Don. All right.
Anyways, I digress. So your question initially was, what do you think about this? These tariffs, what are you going to do, so on and so forth. As a single consumer, there's not much I can do other than, continue to support my local businesses and go out and buy Canadian.
It's not easy though, Mike, is it? I mean, I'm doing the same thing, and it's I spend more time now, particularly at the grocery store, than I have for many years because I'm busy flipping labels and looking to see where things are made. It's not easy to do that these days.
Well, there's a couple of apps that you could, they're readily available. They're free apps, and you could use them. You scan the UPC code, and they give you a small pedigree of where the product comes. But, I mean, when you're shopping, you usually buy always the same items, or you kind of alternate between items. So you kind of get used to where stuff is and what you buy, right?
Right.
And you just got to be conscious about it. But one thing that really, really is getting to me, is irking me right now, is that it's just a constant barrage of, the tariffs this, the tariffs that. And when I say you, the media, I say that in a general term, not you specifically.
Sure.
I just find that, the guys or the media should start hauling in their horses. Yeah, we get it. There are tariffs out there. We don't need that built-up anxiety that comes from repetitively repeating or repetitively stating the obvious. There's nothing we can do. And honestly, if we start retaliating, that's what I believe the President of the United States wants. He wants that attention. He wants that focus from the other countries to be at his mercy, and that just fuels his ego or whatever it is that it fuels. So, and what can we do? Can we retaliate with equal tariffs? If we do, then we're only taxing ourselves. We're only hurting ourselves. We're not really doing anything productive or anything to stop this whole schmozzle or this issue. I think, honestly, I truly believe if you don't pay attention to the little baby that's crying in the crib, sometimes he'll cry himself to sleep. And there are much bigger things that we should be worried about. I mean, I don't know if people have been paying attention of what's going on in the Middle East. But ladies and gentlemen, open your eyes and check what's going on, because things are not brewing very easily in Iran, and what's going on with the bombers that were just transferred over to Diego Vegas in the Indian Ocean. There's a brouhaha happening out there, and if something happens in the Middle East of that magnitude, I think we're going to have a much bigger problem than dealing with tariffs.
Fair points, all fair points, Mike, and it's kind of a catch-22, right? Like, I understand your point about us talking about it all the time, and I get that, but this country's never faced anything like this before, right? And it's a constantly evolving story. It changes not just every day; it changes every hour. So
we never faced what happened on at 9/11. We've never faced that before. But yes, there was a barrage about it, but it then died. It slowly eased itself out of the media, and it allowed people just to kick back and take a deep breath and reassess what was going on. The world changed that day. I don't know if you travel by plane, but I'm a retired military, and trust me, that day everything changed. My job changed. My way of traveling changed. It was just unbelievable. But we overcame it. We we grew from it, and we are better from it. I'm sure we're better from it. So ultimately, my message is, let's not get sucked in to the rhetoric of what he wants us to be sucked into, so he can absorb our attention, and he can be in his crib crying about, this, that, and the other thing, and Mommy, I want more. So anyways, I digress. And to your previous caller, thank you for your service. That's awesome that he went to the museum. That was always one of my favorite haunts to go when I was in Ottawa.
It's a greit place. Absolutely great place. Mike, I appreciate your service and I appreciate your call.
Yes, Dan Allstrand, thank you, man. You made my day.
There you go, brother. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Vanessa, I'm serious. She's on Canva. She's making a shirt up right now. We're going to stop down, take a break. The Midweek Meltdown continues on the other side. I'm Dan Allstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back. I'm Dan Allstrand, or as our last caller called me, Little Todd? Is that what it was? Anyway, appreciate the calls, and there's a number of lines open if you want to get in and get a chance to get onto the radio. This is a wonderful opportunity. Off the top of the program today, I mentioned last night my experience trying to get to sleep, and somebody celebrating something in my neighborhood and setting off a ton, and I'm exaggerating, but there was 25 anyway, different fireworks that went off, and I raised the point. Like, I understand it. I know we have a long tradition with, and I know many cultures have a long tradition with fireworks. But is it appropriate to set off fireworks on a Tuesday night at 10 o'clock? I know there are rules that govern it, and I know that fireworks are not illegal-ish. But do we need to do it on Tuesday night? Can we not say, okay, like, look, if you buy this, you have to, there's a city bylaw, there might even be, I don't know, but there's a city bylaw, you can launch these things on holiday weekends or on weekends and at dusk on Saturdays or whatever it is, as long as there's no fire ban. It didn't feel very neighborly last night, considering I live in a neighborhood with a school, and I would imagine that there were a number of parents trying to get their kids to go to sleep, and those things blowing off would have kind of ruined that. Anyway, I got an email. It said, listening to the show this morning, this is from Gary, by the way. A couple years ago, when HRM added 3% to our property taxes for a climate tax change, whatever, I emailed my counselor, and I said I thought it was counterproductive to allow and support fireworks displays, he puts in brackets, which are harmful to the environment, while charging a climate tax. Fireworks contain many chemicals which we breathe, fall into water systems, into the soil, etc. I told her there are many sites that warn of fireworks and many news agencies reporting on the effects of the environment from fireworks. Got a reply from a city staffer who asked if I was looking at a certain report on the internet. I said I looked at many from very reputable sources and news agencies like the CBC regarding how harmful fireworks are to the environment, climate, people, animals, etc. I didn't get any replies back. Perhaps I can asking me to ask a counselor about fireworks displays in the future. Again, my point being, why allow something that is not an essential, like oil for my furnace, to pollute the environment and then charge us a tax to help the environment and the climate? That is from Gary. Interesting points. I know we've had on a couple of occasions talked to a group of wildlife biologists and animal people about the effects that fireworks have on dogs and cats and horses and cows and livestock, and their concern for it. I don't think we should ban fireworks. I just think that we need to give everybody kind of a heads up that it's coming. And I mentioned my military service and that the training kicked in when they went off last night, and I don't, I'm not suffering from any ill effects of my military service, but there are many people in this community who are, and these kind of things can be a trigger. And when they come unannounced, I would imagine that makes things even worse. That's my only point. 902-405-6000. Let's go to the phones. We welcome Sean to the show. Sean, how are you?
Hey, how are you today?
I'm good, sir. What's on your mind?
I got a couple of things, actually.
Sure.
The fireworks thing that you just mentioned, I'm an old reservist. I served back in Ontario. And yes, I completely understand where that comes from, of unannounced noises. a backfire of a car or a tire blowing or something like that, definitely get very cringy. Totally.
Yep.
I get that. I was wondering, maybe our government needs to look into talking with Mr. Trump, as he was going on about the big fentanyl crisis that is coming from Canada into the United States. My thing is, where is any of the heads of the parties talking about the mass smuggling of firearms that is coming from the United States into Canada? How many shootings have now happened just in the Dartmouth area alone this year?
Yeah, this week. Never mind this year. Yep.
Yes, exactly. And I'm a hunter.
As am I.
And there you go. So you understand where the Liberal government right now slowly taking away our legally purchased and taxed property or firearms, whatever you want to say, and then all of a sudden is now we're criminals if we hold on to them. And when statistically it is shown through everything that has that a lot of these mass shootings and everything that has happened, I'm talking about Canada, not the United States. These are illegally purchased or taken firearms and ammunition, and is now being used illegally. I think maybe the Canadian government, whatever party that gets in, needs to go to Mr. Trump and say, well, we have a legitimate problem that we want to address with you, and maybe this is why we need to warrant some sort of tariff.
Fair point, Sean. It's something that I've asked from the very beginning. I think many did when this first started, way back in, November last year, is, if this fentanyl thing, which is essentially a made-up statistic, with any number that we've seen, it's the minuscule amount that is crossing the border from Canada into the United States compared to the border with Mexico. That being said, we know that there is a flood of illegal, particularly handguns, that are crossing over into Canada from the United States, and I think it's a legit beef.
Oh, I absolutely. I honestly think that, and I believe they also know it too. I'm sure they have some sort of statistics that, as well as what the RCMP and our Canadian border systems have in regards to the amount of firearms that are coming in this country, and it's coming in droves. Right. There's definitely some sort of organized crime that's doing this, and I really honestly think that, yeah, okay, well, it's tit for tat.
There you go. Sean, I appreciate the call, sir.
Have a good day.
You too. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Let's see if we can squeeze another call in here before the break. Rick, how are you?
Good, Dan. Look, who's Rogers' main competitor in Canada?
I would imagine the other telecoms, right?
Right, exactly. How come there are no American telecom companies operating out of Canada?
You'd have to ask the regulators that.
Well, no, I know why. It's because they're not allowed.
Right.
That's why. It's the same. It's the same thing. It's just not allowed. It's beyond a tariff. Okay, there's no tariffs on them. They just are not allowed. Mm-hmm. And the same thing is true, almost true, in terms of the airlines. And the third thing would be, of course, dairy and eggs, which has supply management, which in effect blocks out all American stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So are these things fair?
I would say to you, yes.
Okay, then everything Trump is doing is fair.
I don't understand.
You don't understand. Well, okay, we are allowed to sell stuff in the States, and they have a 25% tariff on it. They can't even sell stuff like communications or airlines or eggs and poultry and milk in Canada, they're just not allowed. It's beyond a tariff. This is what I'm trying to say. That's why Trump is so pissed off. It's because they have been closed out of these particular things. So I know that they went through negotiations and they allowed it to happen. Okay?
There's a trade deal, dude. There's a trade deal on the books that he signed and said it was the best deal. No, let me finish. I'll let you. Now it's my turn.
Look,
he signed it, Rick. He signed it and said it was the best deal ever made at the time. He said it. I've got the quote in front of me. So what changed between now and then?
I know that. Okay, what do you,
right?
I pay attention anyway. I know that. Okay, but things have changed.
What changed?
4 years ago, and what has changed is
changed?
The Americans are now $34 trillion in debt, and that's what he's trying to do.
So he's broke,
okay?
so now it's okay to tariff Canadian goods.
Well, sure, he's the president of the United States. He can tariff Canadian goods, and he can tariff all the other countries in the world their goods. Okay, that's his job. So he's not responsible for Canada, and we're not responsible for the United States. We've fallen into a particular bad situation because our pipelines have been blocked, and all of the other anti-resource rules that have been put in place in order to save the planet with climate change. So anyway, I just think it's ridiculous to complain and call this a tariff war when in 1985, prior to that, there were tariffs on everything in both directions.
And they ended the tariffs with 2 trade deals, Rick.
Yes, I know they did.
2.
But before that, no one was calling it a war. That's what my point is.
But there's a deal on the books. The Donald Trump wrote the darn deal. And now he's just decided that it's no good anymore.
So, okay, you're trying to say Trump is a bad guy. I understand that. I get that every day. What I'm trying to say is that it's foolish for us to tariff American goods. Do you drink orange juice? If you did, it just went up $1. Okay? So who's going to collect the tariff? The Canadian government.
125,000 auto worker jobs are going to go away in 2 weeks because he wants to tariff the industry and drive it into the United States. Is that fair?
Well, it's fair to him.
But is it fair to the rest of the planet?
Well, is it fair that Rogers and Bell don't have any particular competition from Verizon and whoever else is down there? So is that fair? Okay, we're not talking fair. We're just talking business, countries, deals, okay?
Pierre Poilievre has said that they're illegal. Mark Carney has said they're illegal. Jagmeet Singh has said they're illegal. All of these tariffs are illegal. So
illegal by whose standard? Okay, he broke the. What are you going to do? Like this elbow up thing.
Okay, Rick. So he broke the rules,
I don't need your analysis, Dan. I don't need your analysis.
Then, Rick, I appreciate your call.
Okay,
I appreciate your call, and you have a great day. And if you don't want to listen to me talk, then forget the phone number. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. I don't understand the theory that, he did it, so it's just the way it is. It's wrong. It's illegal. He signed the deal, and he's breaking it. He said the deal, art of the deal, was the best deal ever signed 4 years ago. And now, because he's broke, it's no good anymore. And we're just going to tariff over some ridiculous, unfounded accusation that there's a flood of fentanyl coming across the border, or there's a massive trade imbalance between Canada and the United States, which has been proven time again that it's not true. I just don't understand. I just don't understand how. Anyway, we're going to take a break. I'm going to get a coffee. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. The telephone number 902-405-6000. It's 902-405-6000 is the open hour. You can talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. You can share your opinions, but you cannot, and I will not accept you saying that you won't accept my analysis. It's our show. 902-405-6000 is the number. Welcome, Chris, to the show. Chris, how are you? Chris, are you there?
Sorry, Dan.
How are you?
I'm not bad at all, thank you. I hope you've got something stronger than just coffee in that cup.
Maybe in about 10 minutes. How's that?
About 10 minutes. All right. Well, gee, if I had time, I'd come join you.
What's on your mind?
Look, I haven't heard anyone say this, but I think I will. I'd like to put a big shout out and a thank you to Pierre Poilievre for getting rid of the carbon tax on gasoline and diesel fuel.
Yeah, we had a couple people called and said that yesterday.
Yeah, good. I didn't have chance to listen yesterday.
No, that's fair.
I missed it, and I often listen to your replays in the evening, but I didn't get a chance to do that either. But I'm glad they did call, and I think it's incumbent upon us to recognize the fact that Poilievre, even though he's not yet Prime Minister, he's accomplished quite a lot for someone not being a Prime Minister. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, he certainly brought the carbon tax to the campaign trail, and it would have been, I think, the ballot box question before all of the crazy happened with the United States.
Right, and if he hadn't have brought it forward and harped on it for the last number of years,
absolutely right. Yep, absolutely.
Carney never would have done it.
Nope, I agree with you.
Yeah, thank you. Trump, to the last guy's call there, I forget, was it Rick or
Rick?
Anyway, Trump. I think Trump's sitting back there. He sees a government, really a non-existent government right now in Canada, in a very, very weak position, and he sees an opportunity to seize upon that. And also, he's looking back on the last deal that he made, and you're quite right, he praises the best deal ever. But of course, with Trump, everything's the best deal. Anything he does is the best of the best of the best. It
Absolutely.
just is with him for whatever friggin' reason. But anyway, and he's probably a little bit angry with himself and resentful at the fact that he might have been able to get a better deal the last time, and he maybe didn't push hard enough, because the kind of guy Trump is, and I've done business with these kind of people in the past before, they're complete a-holes to do business with. No matter what the deal is, they'll want to do a deal 50-50, no problem, as long as their 50% is perceived to be bigger than your 50%, or else they won't do it. And that's where Trump's coming from. He's such a you-know-what. To get off that for a second and get something here a little more local, I see where the Halifax Water is facing a $34 million deficit in this year's
I did read
budget.
that. That's astounding to me.
That is astounding. And, of course, you know what that means. Higher water rates, higher increases. Now, don't get me wrong. I know all this stuff costs money. It has to be done. But the main culprits, they say, that are fueling this $34 million deficit are salaries, gas costs, debt services, debt payments, and ongoing projects. Well, let's look at that for a second. As of yesterday, gas costs are now down.
Yes.
15 or 16 or whatever percent. Debt payments, well, they're getting cheaper. Interest rates are on the way down and have been the last 6 or 8 months or so, right?
At least for now, yep.
Yep, for now, okay. Ongoing projects. Well, if that's a big deal in this $34 million, why are they contemplating and going to go ahead with, as far as I can tell, an $80 million headquarters building in Burnside?
Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? And I don't know, and I don't know the sort of the reasoning behind it, why they've decided that now is the time. But if I'm a business owner, and I know, Chris, that you've been in business before, and I'm facing that much of a deficit, I'm not going to try and push that onto my customers so that I can build a shiny new building.
No, that's right. Well, look at the building out near Carey Hill. That one's not that old. It's quite a nice building. I've been out there. It was an expensive building to build. And what's wrong with it? Why do they need to get rid of that? Because my understanding is that they're going to try and incorporate everything under one roof as sorts now. They have 4 different buildings, I believe, and they want to incorporate everything under one roof. Well, maybe that makes sense. Maybe there's an economy of scale there and centralization, all this sort of stuff. But I see no reason, but it's typical. I know they're not government, but they're the next best thing or the next worst thing.
Right.
Government always does that. Everything they build has an expiration date that is so much sooner than anything built by private industry. I'm living in a house that's 150 years old. It's fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's in quite good condition because it's been maintained.
Yep.
And the government, we see all the schools that were built in the 50s and 60s and 70s pretty well have all been torn down and replaced. Everything they touch turns to you-know-what. They just can't manage it. And now, jump federally here, Carney wants the federal government to go in the home building business. I mean, give me a break.
Right.
Government can't run a business. No way can they run a business.
It's never cheaper. That's for darn sure.
No. It sure as heck isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, we're over-governed to the point that it's ridiculous, completely ridiculous. And since we're in tax season now with our wonderful Revenue Canada, as I prefer to call them, the old name, the CRA, you realize that in the United States, the IRS has one employee for every 4,200 Americans. CRA in Canada has one employee for every 667 Canadians. Now, how does the math work on that?
Doesn't make much sense. Chris, great call. I appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, Dan.
And we got about a minute left, so let's see if we can squeeze one more in here. David, you've got a minute. Go.
Yeah, something that's always bothered me about Trump is that the definition of a good deal is when both parties have to give something up, and they both get something of value. And Trump just does not believe in that. He believes in trying to make a deal and get something for free.
Right.
And so these Trump tariff apologists that I've heard so far since I've been listening, they don't get it. They don't get that Trump is trying to manhandle us and bully us using absurd arguments, and he should just be shut down flat. And so I'm 100% in retaliatory tariffs. I know it's going to hurt, but you got to stand up to him. Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it, sir, and appreciate each and every one of you that took the time to dial the numbers and join the show, even if we don't agree. That's the joy of this program. I really do, and I honestly do love the open hour. I look forward to it every single day. Thank you very much to Vanessa Van Inez on the other side of the glass for all the hard work that she does. Don't forget, she screens your calls before they get to me, and she is fantastic at her job. Tomorrow is going to be dedicated to the tariffs. We're going to find out at 5 o'clock today what they are, what it means. All part of the show tomorrow. So make sure that you are near a radio or near your smart speaker and you can tune in and join us. Until then, everybody, take care of yourselves and remember, be kind to one another.